Hi, I'm Brenda Reese. I'm a relationship mentor and coach. And I'd like to share with you a topic today about can you forgive someone but can't forgive their actions? So I am talking with our dear friend Kim about this lovely topic. And so today, um, let's talk about this. Kim,
Yeah,
have
no,
you?
I'm
Go ahead.
I know, and I'll apologize up front. My internet is a little wonky today,
Okay,
so if I talk over you, I suspect it's because I'm having a bit of a delay. So
got it.
thank you for being so helpful with that. I was a little worried that my microphone wasn't my internet wasn't going to work perfectly. So yeah, I this has come up a bit, right? In some of the work that I've personally been doing in and also just, in working and listening around to people that I've spoken with and it comes up, it's like, okay, that's great, how I want to forgive them, I feel like I can forgive the person, but honestly I don't know how to let go of the actions, right? Like I can't forgive their actions. And so I'm wondering what the not the correlation, but I guess kind of what the correlation is between those two things. And do you have to have them both, or do you can do one or the other, or how does talk me through how this works, Miss Brenda?
Absolutely, because I love this because, you know, we can forgive someone without forgiving their actions. Because as we hear, and we've all heard this, we don't condone, forgiveness is not condoning bad behavior. And so, but it doesn't mean that we have to hang on to the hurt or we have to hang on to the anger. Because what it does is when we do that, when we don't forgive them, or when we forgive them, that frees us. Their behaviors, though, are something that we can learn from.
Yeah.
So if I am continually in an abusive relationship, but I'm forgiving the person, but still am forgiving, saying, oh, okay, well, he didn't mean to do that, or she didn't mean to do that, or they didn't mean to do that, but that keeps happening, then okay, there's a disconnect here. So I am not somehow worthy. I don't feel like I'm worthy of being treated right. So when we can look at the person, the messenger, like when we can look at the person and work on forgiving them, but learning from the behavior doesn't mean we close off our heart. It doesn't mean that we shut ourselves off from people. But what we do is we learn from the behavior. We learn from how I'm being treated, and then I can work on my worthiness, right? So I'm not treated that way in the future in other relationships, but definitely not forgiving the behavior, but learning from it. So it's also not holding a grudge against it, like, oh gosh, everybody's going to treat me that way. Right.
Right. Well, because I think that's how it feels to me, right? Like if I go, okay, well, I get that this was a lesson. I can forgive the pain. I can let go of what the person of I can forgive the person for maybe like you said, maybe they didn't realize what they were doing, but sometimes it kind of feels like they did know what they were doing. And I
Right.
guess that for me, that's the fear. It's like, okay, well, if I can forgive you because I want to let go of that in my world, right? So I can find peace in
Yeah.
that. But how do but again, I guess it's that fear that maybe they will do it again, or even worse, that then I've said that those actions are okay. And I
Yeah.
don't know how to forgive the actions and still not say that those actions are okay.
Right. And it's not necessarily about forgiving the actions.
Okay.
So for me, when in my relationships, I've had different kinds of abuse, like you and I've talked about, different kinds of abuse. And so I'm not forgiving that action per se. So
Okay.
I am working like with my exes. I worked on forgiving the person.
Right.
And then I separated the actions, person, actions. Because yes, we can give the benefit of the doubt and say they didn't necessarily mean to do that, but sometimes people do. Sometimes people do want to hurt because they're hurting, right? And
Right.
so we look at the actions separately. And what I do is I learn from those actions in the sense of where have these actions happened before? And why do they keep happening? Why am I entering into relationships where this is happening? Now, it's nothing against me, but it's taking a look at Somewhere along my line, somewhere in my relationship timeline here, I have learned or thought or felt that these acts being treated this way was okay. And it usually comes from our childhood, right? Because that's what happens.
Right.
Somehow I feel like I'm deserving of this behavior.
Right.
So I separate those two. So I forgive the person so that I can feel a little bit more ease in my body. And it doesn't mean that I reconcile with the person. That's really important. It doesn't mean that I get back together. It means that I can work on the forgiveness piece and not get back together. And then I can look at the behavior and go, wow, okay, how many times has this happened? How have I felt about it? And how far back does it go? And then, ooh, let me see how I feel about this behavior and let me make some corrections for myself around it because I kept getting treated the same way. You probably did too, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so when we're treated the same way, it's kind of like, ooh, I look at it, it's like, ooh, let me wake up here. Let me see where do I not feel like I'm deserving of being treated with respect, with trust, with appreciation? Because maybe I'm not doing that for myself.
You know, it's funny when you're saying this, my brain is going, oh, so this feels like forgiveness like 102. If 101 is how can I forgive somebody that's, done something, or how do I get into that forgiveness, and how does forgiveness work, and how do I, find that in myself and have it not be about the other person, right?
Yes.
But then I feel like, I felt like always hand in hand, if you forgive the person, well, that means you have to forgive the actions as well.
Mhm.
I kind of feel like what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that that's not necessarily true. This is like forgiveness 102, in that you can forgive the person, you do the work, you forgive yourself, right? We find that peace, but then the actions can kind of stand isolated, and I can still not be happy with those actions or what
Right.
was done to me or what I allowed, right?
Right.
Whatever that is. I don't necessarily I don't necessarily have to ignore that. I still have to be conscious of that, so that I'm
Mhm.
not bringing that back into my life again in other areas. Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying. And it's not to be just left alone, right?
Right.
Actions, right? But it is separate. It's like for me, I would look at the person first, right? Because I want to be able to have the freedom to move forward. And if I'm holding any kind of resentment, as people know, it weighs heavy within me and it shows up as a big boulder between me and where I want to go.
Yeah.
Because it can. So let's do this first. Let's look at that first. And then we separate those actions. And it's like, it's okay to be angry at the actions. It's okay to have the feelings all around those actions, because that's important. Our anger is a messenger.
Right.
Our anger is the motivator that can help us to go, I don't want to be treated like that anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And it can
Yeah.
be, so the anger towards the action is important to give us a message. The anger towards the person, though, we want to look at. We want to really take a look at, and we want to do some work around it to see when we are ready to let go of these feelings, to work on forgiving that person. And I'm not saying jumping into it when we've been hurt, and when we've been hurt, we don't want to jump into forgiveness. That's really important. But we do want to have a little separation from the person, and we do want to separate those actions. And it's like I said, having emotions around it is okay. Anger, like we're told anger is bad, and it's not. When we can learn to do that, let me be angry at the actions, because that tells me that somebody's pressing a boundary that that is important to me. And so let me separate those. It's okay to be angry at actions. Let's look at our feelings towards the person so that we can work on that first. And because we don't really want to hold on to it, because we're the ones that suffer. It's so true. We're the ones, as you
Yeah.
know, and we've talked about,
Yeah.
we're the ones that suffer when we hold this towards the person. And when we can look at this in a whole different way, when we can look at it as, what am I here to learn about this? right? Not just blame the other person for being an asshole or being, not nice or whatever, but
Right.
just kind of going, it doesn't mean that they aren't that, right? And that, but it means that, wow, let me look at this a little differently and work on that, but separate those actions. It's okay.
It actually, I have to tell you, it feels more peaceful to me because it feels like, again, I hadn't really thought about, I mean, I understand the two concepts of it, but I hadn't thought about it until just we're talking about it in this way, is that it kind of feels more peaceful. It kind of lets me detach them from the actions, and
Mhm.
I can find peace and resolution with the human and choose not to have them in my life anymore, but
Yes,
also not have that angsty feeling where you're creepily stalking them on social to see what they're up to, right? Because that I'm
yes,
just saying, I'm just
I know.
saying,
I
it might
know.
have,
We've all done it.
right? So it lets me go, okay, I can be done with that, but I can still like work through those actions and how that made me feel and how I might have, wanted that into my life for whatever reason or what lesson I'm trying to learn. That actually feels more peaceful to me because it makes me feel like I can excuse them from the conversation and
Yes.
then just deal with the action, how it made me feel and what that means to me, which has nothing to do with them.
Correct. Exactly. And the other piece of this is, what if you do want to be in relationship with them? So what if it is a family member, or what if it is a partner? What if it is a friend that you've been hurt by, betrayed by, and someone wants to have a relationship with them? That's when we do the work on with the person,
Yeah,
and we do the work on the actions.
yeah,
Because, I mean, and we do it a little bit more closer together than we would if we aren't gonna be in relationship. Because forgiveness is really necessary if we're gonna reconcile. If we're gonna get back together, if we're gonna hang out, we do
right.
need forgiveness, because otherwise, we're gonna be doing the things. We're gonna be, holding that bitterness. We're gonna be sarcastically, stinging them. We're gonna be
It's gonna
do
be messy.
it's
It's
gonna
gonna
be messy.
be
And,
messy.
and then, yeah, because sometimes we think we have forgiven and we haven't.
Right,
And, and so when we're holding any kind of resentment or tension, when we're wanting them to hurt, we're not there yet. And so,
right,
but really taking a look at, to recap this whole thing, be able to forgive someone, you don't have to forgive the action
right,
right away, right?
right,
But learn
right.
from that action, and then we're going to use that as a tool for our self-awareness. And we're going to say, okay, now I can work on this actions. Where else has it happened before? And
Yeah,
that's going to be super valuable, to do. And if you want to reconcile, then that takes a little bit more work to work on both of those, so that there can be some sort of okayness around not really ever forgiving the action. I'm going to say this, not ever really totally forgiving the action until we have done our inner work, our self awareness, and done the work on it to see where else it's shown up, so that it
right,
doesn't show up again.
right.
We're the
No,
ones that can take responsibility for our own awareness, our own, what I'll call, healing around that.
yeah, this was great. This is actually quite helpful, right? Like that's a really great distinction. And also I feel like it because sometimes you're like, oh, forgive the person, forgive the actions. Like it gets a little fluffy and you're like,
Yep.
whatever. But this is really tangible. And I like that separation because it allows you to separate and go, person, forgive. Do I want to stay in a relationship with you or not? And both those things, they're not contingent on each other. I
No.
like that.
Yeah, I
Well
do
done.
too. Yes, thank you. And I have several podcasts about it too,
Oh, great.
about how to know when you've forgiven and when not, and also around reconciliation, and also around some other things. So there's a podcast there that can be helpful. And you can search, people can search for the topics too, because we've covered quite a few of them. And if you have any more suggestions, for the listeners, please put it in the comments and let us know what you want to know more of. Oh my gosh, Kim, thank you.
Are you kidding? Thank you. I love these.
I really do
It's
too.
my It's my little mini session for the week, and I really appreciate it, selfishly
Oh, I
so. So
love it.
I'm really I love the work that I do with you. Like I've said a billion times, I think every human on the planet deserves a little bit of time with Brenda. So I
Oh,
hope people reach out and really get some value out of your wisdom, because it's vast and beautiful. So thank you for doing the work that you're doing.
thank you. Yes. And if you have any questions, please reach out. There's the links below, and we're here for you. Have a great day.